Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Tirza and I am a mother and a surfer in Southern California, and I am passionate about sharing the knowledge that I have to help other moms or just other surfers in general learn how to surf and get through some of the roadblocks that a lot of beginners hit when they're first learning how to surf. So let's get into this video about how boogie boarding is a secret weapon to learning how to surf faster and gaining more confidence out in the water. Let's get into it. Boogie boarding was something that when I was first learning how to surf, my husband recommended I start with, and I was really incredulous about how much it would help, and I really just wanted to learn how to surf. But I caved in and I did actually end up starting to boogie board, and it really helped accelerate my surfing. And I had no previous knowledge about the ocean or catching waves at all, and so it was very overwhelming to have this big giant board with me out in the water. Even in small waves, it was just very hard to manage, and I just didn't end up having a lot of fun when I was trying to first learn how to surf. So boogie boarding was a great stepping stone to having a smaller board to deal with. I could duck dive under the waves if I needed to, which I couldn't do with a big foam board, and it just made it a lot simpler for me to understand how to paddle around effectively, how to catch waves, and just not be so overwhelmed by having this giant board that I had to deal with in the midst of all this learning that I was trying to do. So boogie boards are a lot smaller than surfboards, and we're not talking about the cheapy Walmart boogie boards that you buy and you crash on a tiny little wave and the whole thing just cracks in half. We're talking about a long, thick, very durable boogie board that you could catch unbroken waves with swim fins, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later in the video. With a boogie board, you're going to need the boogie board, like I said, itself. You're going to want something that's pretty durable, that's got some flexibility to it, and it's just well made. It's not going to come apart after a couple months of boogie boarding with it. The next thing you're going to need is swim fins. I will try to put a picture up here of what I'm talking about, and these are the key to boogie boarding in unbroken waves. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people catching whitewash on a boogie board, but if you're going to go out into the surf, you're going to need swim fins, not only for your safety, but also a lot of lifeguards will ask you to go towards the swim area if you don't have swim fins, because it's just a little more dangerous because you have a smaller board to be out in the surf and trying to catch waves and whatnot. I think the brand I have is called Ally. I just picked them up at a surf shop. They were on clearance, and so I got them for much cheaper than they normally would have been. So I would definitely, like I say with a lot of things with surfing, I would definitely try to check out secondhand options. Make sure they're in good shape, of course, but it can be very expensive buying surf equipment brand new, so definitely check out either Craigslist or eBay for some options for cheaper fins that are still in good shape to use. That way you're not paying a ton of money out of pocket to start this new hobby. Another thing that I found personally is really helpful with swim fins is having a pair of old socks. Ankle socks are great, that you don't mind getting sandy and dirty and kind of just being throwaway. The thing is, when you are not used to wearing fins, a lot of swim fins are very thick. Depending on the brand, they're more stiff than others, and so they can actually give you blisters over time as you get sand inside of them and it rubs around. So having a pair of socks to cushion that sandpaper effect can really help a lot. So you'll want to make sure when you're getting swim fins that they're, tight enough that you can keep them on, but they're also not too tight that you couldn't put a pair of socks on and wear them as well. The other thing I'd really recommend with swim fins to have is having tethers, either the kind that loop around the fin and then loop around your ankle, or the ones I think I have loop around the fin and then they have a tightening latch over the top of your foot that helps keep the fin in place. That way you don't lose your expensive fins out in the ocean. I had a friend that happened to, and it was really disappointing. He had one fin, but he lost the other one. So I'd highly recommend that as well. So now that you are geared up for boogie boarding, let's talk a little bit more about in depth why boogie boarding is something I would recommend over just jumping out in the water learning how to surf. So because a boogie board is smaller, the balancing is not as hard as with a long board. you're usually a little bit further back on the boogie board. You still want to be forward enough that you are level on the water so you're paddling effectively, but there's not as much balancing as when you have your whole body on the surfboard. It just takes a lot more balancing to figure out how to paddle well. And having the extra push of your fins and your feet can help a lot too. But all that being said, again, it's easier sometimes having a smaller board as you're paddling into waves and learning how to paddle into waves, especially when you wipe out. You're just not dealing with this giant board that's going to come back and hit you in the head and hurt. Again, with a foam board, it's not as bad as a fiberglass board, but they still hurt when they hit you. As you're getting used to the idea of managing this board, it's really helpful having a smaller board. So as I was mentioning with timing your takeoff, when you have a big board, it's just a lot to deal with. And when you're beginning surfing, you do need a bigger board to give you that balance and stability. But having a smaller boogie board teaches you how to get right in the pocket of a wave without having to worry about standing up and popping up, and you can still enjoy the ride and have a lot of fun and stay really stoked about learning how to ride a wave on a boogie board without the added pressure of having to try to stand up and pop up. It just helps keep that confidence up for you when you're learning. And I'm not saying you don't have to try surfing at all, but I think it really helps to kind of balance it out with boogie boarding and surfing. That way you don't get so discouraged as quickly, because learning how to surf, there's a lot of things happening. You're learning how to read the ocean, you're learning how to pop up, you're learning how to paddle around, how to paddle into waves, and all of that is while you're trying to manage a very large board. So it can just be very overwhelming as a beginner. So boogie boarding is like this nice little step into like learning half of those skills. And then once you're more confident and comfortable with that, reading waves, paddling around and getting into waves and getting out into the lineup, then that's a great time to transition into a long foam board, because you're not struggling as much with that. And it just makes that transition a lot easier than going from knowing nothing to cruising on waves. One other thing that boogie boards are really helpful for is wave selection, and this was a big thing for me that was really difficult on a surfboard. I couldn't take off. On a big surfboard I could take off earlier, but it was a lot harder to take off later when waves were really steep. And with boogie boarding, it's a lot easier to do that, and you can kind of get into more waves, I feel like, with a boogie board when you're first learning how to surf, because again, you're not trying to pop up and get into the waves the same way you are with a surfboard. Another thing that is super helpful with a boogie board versus a surfboard is there's less chance of damaging the board because they're usually more durable. So you don't have to worry about dinging it or losing a fin. I know the Jerry Lopez I surf on a lot, those are notorious for losing their fins. So a boogie board overall is a lot more durable usually than a surfboard, especially a fiberglass board. And one really fun thing about boogie boards is that even if the waves are small, you can catch shore breaky waves on a boogie board. So there's just often a lot more versatility with a boogie board over a surfboard. You need more clean waves with a surfboard to actually be able to ride them. And with a boogie board, you can kind of just catch closeouts and it's not as big of a deal as if you're riding a surfboard. So I hope this video was helpful for you. Learning how to boogie board before surfing was honestly life-changing for me and really helped accelerate my surfing in ways that I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't started boogie boarding and then transitioned into learning how to surf. It made going back to surfing so much easier. A lot of the things I was struggling with weren't really a big deal anymore, and I could just read the waves better, paddle into them better, position myself better. I was more comfortable just being out in the ocean in general, and so learning how to paddle around a bigger board was a adjustment, but I didn't have all these other things happening at the same time as trying to learn how to manage this giant board and getting into waves. So I hope this helps you be encouraged to maybe pick up a boogie board and some swim fins and maybe try that for a little bit as you're learning how to surf. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up down below. It helps me out a lot, and maybe share it with a friend who you think might really enjoy it and get some helpful tips from it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.